In short, in my opinion, this movie is truly brilliant. If you have been longing for a movie that is well made, doesn't rely on cheap laughs, and actually takes you on an emotional roller coaster, do yourself a favor and watch this movie. Now, I say this movie is underrated because most of you probably haven't seen it, so this is why I'm making this video. With its release in 2020, this movie's box office success probably fell victim to the pandemic. Many cinemas were closed for most of the year, and the highest grossing movie in 2020 was The 800, with a return of nearly 461 million. If you compare that to a normal year of cinema like 2022, the top 10 movies all made more at the box office than the best movie in 2020. So now we're going to take a deep dive into the two main elements that make this movie so great. Enjoy. The golden rule: show, not tell. Most of you have probably heard of this rule, but especially modern cinema has its difficulties with this rule, because it all starts with the filmmaker and the studio believing in the fact that your audience is not dumb. The filmmaker actually has to believe that the audience is actually interested in the movie and will follow a good story if you present it. If you don't show, but you do tell, then you kind of end up with a scene like this from Twilight.
My time as a human was over, but I never felt more alive.
Instead of coming up with some creative scene that shows us how Bella is feeling, they come up with this mediocre standing in the light and then having a voiceover tell us what she's feeling. So we're going to take a look at 3 scenes in which Greenland does an excellent job at showing us and not telling us. The first scene is actually the opening scene of the movie. The scene begins showing John, the protagonist, on a construction site wearing nice clothing, and then we see him taking some notes, so we can assume he's probably an architect. The movie doesn't tell us this at all. Actually, there's not a single word in the first scene, but just based on what the audience sees, it can assume, okay, he's doing good at work, he's in a good position, and he's an architect. We learned all of that about the protagonist in a couple of seconds without a single word being said. Let's take a look at another scene. John comes home from work and thinks about ringing the bell. He hesitates for a moment and then decides to take the key. Everything without a single word being said. But just based on what we see, what the audience is shown, we can make the assumption something's off in his family life, his marriage, or whatever. We don't know exactly what's going on, but that's the beauty. The audience can make assumptions based on what they see and then try to figure it out as the movie goes along. That's great. Now, the last scene I want to take a look at is actually my favorite scene in this movie when it comes to showing, not telling, and that's the scene with his neighbor. In this scene, we see the neighbor ask him how things are going, and John says everything's great. And then the neighbor makes some hand signs, and John replies with some hand signs. And just by that scene, the audience knows, okay, these guys are more than just neighbors. We don't know if they're best friends, but that's the beauty of showing or telling. The audience doesn't know everything. The audience can just make assumptions and then further investigates its assumptions when the movie continues. So with these 3 scenes, I think it becomes very clear how Greenland does an excellent job at showing or telling, and it makes the viewing experience so much better. Please, modern cinema, show more and tell less. The key word is active protagonist. But before we take a look at that, the movie lays the groundwork for this by having a relatable protagonist. The characters in this movie are relatable because they're just like you and me, a normal citizen. Most catastrophe movies have someone like Brad Pitt in World War Z as a protagonist, and you could take a look at that.
Meet Jerry Lane. He's just your average, everyday, super attractive, scarf-wearing, Spanish-speaking, airplane piloting, sharpshooting, skull-bashing, armor crafting, arm chopping, prisoner interrogating, surgery doing, slow motion having, antidote making, eagle-eyed, stay-at-home dad.
But not in this movie. This protagonist is Joe Smo. When he sees the planes, he doesn't call an old friend out of the army to find out what's going on.
Where are they going?
I don't know.
He's just a good old family father that will do anything to protect his family. Now, what makes an active protagonist? The most important aspect is that their actions, both internal and external, reveal their core character and give stories the momentum needed to unfold engagingly. Let's take a look at an example to see what that means. Now in this scene, the characters have arrived at a safe place and are now confronted with a decision.
Now listen, we can either stay here or we can give it a shot, but if we give it a shot, I swear, when we're gonna go, gotta go now.
They can either stay here and wait it out, or they can try and catch the plane. Now there was no plot element pushing the characters, the character chooses, and that's the important aspect.
Okay, let's do it. Nathan, come on.
They decide to take action in trying to catch the plane. And by seeing this decision, the audience learns something about the characters. And with each scenario where the characters have to make such a decision, every time the audience can learn something about them and connect with them. Now there are many examples in the movie of this because it's truly great, but let's take a look at my favorite 3. Now it's simple, but again it's a relatable family, so picture this. You're driving to the airport with a meteor heading towards Earth, that is, and you get stuck in traffic.
Oh no.
Great.
Now what do? You have 2 choices. Reverse on the highway and try a different route, or wait in traffic and hope for the best. What will you do? Let's see what he does. He decides to take action instead of waiting, and we learn about him that when it comes to protecting his family, he doesn't care about the law, he does what it takes. Now for those of you that thought that scenario was easy, what will you do in this case? Your family is one of the lucky few that got elected for the emergency evacuation program from the government, and your neighbors know that you were selected. And now you want to drive off, and one of your neighbors, or maybe even your friends, begs you to take their child with them.
Oh God. Stop! You can take Ellie, please! Maybe we should. Wait!
Again, you have 2 choices. You can do the logical thing and don't take her, because you know that when you arrive at the airport, they're not going to take the child that doesn't belong to your family with you. Or you can do the emotional thing and take her, because everybody around you is begging you to take her.
Oh, Ali, we can't take her. I'm sorry, Kearney.
We gotta go back!
Ali, we can't take her.
Here we learn about the character that even in a stressful situation, he does become emotional and stays rational and does the incredibly tough choice and leaves the kid behind. Again, saving the best for last, in this scene, someone threatens John to give him the ticket for the government emergency program. And this scene is so good because, again, it comes back to the fact that we have a relatable protagonist who isn't some ex-Marine, just like you and I probably aren't. So I ask you, what will you do in this situation?
Listen,
You're gonna give it to me.
I don't want any trouble.
Give me the goddamn band.
Again, we have 2 choices. Avoid conflict and give him the band, or risk conflict and keep the band.
I'll give you the bat.
Here we learn about John that although he's probably never been in a fight before, he's not going to take the passive route and just give him the band, but he's going to be active and fight. Now these are all just little things, but the movie places these scenes where the characters make tough decisions all throughout the movie, and every time it deepens the connection between the audience and the characters. And that connection is really important. And also in these scenes, the movie focuses on showing, not telling. So now you know why I love this movie and think it's underrated, and you should definitely watch it if you haven't watched it. Let me know what you think about the movie in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.